In the history of software engineering, specifically when we look at the evolution of digital workspaces, there's always been this singular kind of driving obsession with, absolute mathematical perfection.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like, you look at early vector graphics or, the original tixel grids, and the entire goal was basically to eradicate noise.
Right, to give the user this completely sterile, predictable environment.
Exactly. You input a value, you get a clean, sharp, binary result. Boom.
And I mean, it's the whole appeal of working digitally, historically speaking. You have an infinite undo button. You have, total dominion over every single pixel.
Yeah, an environment totally free of friction.
Right, free of physics, really. Free of the messiness of the physical world.
Right, but, and this is the kicker, that exact lack of friction becomes a central problem the moment you try to create something that actually feels alive.
Oh, for sure. It completely backfires.
Because if you're an illustrator, a concept artist, or even, a UI designer trying to bring a tactile human element into a project, that flawless mathematical clean room works against you.
It does. Because the human eye is highly evolved to detect artificiality.
Yes. When we see a gradient that is mathematically perfect, it looks cheap. It looks, like a computer made it.
Because it did. And what our brains actually crave is chaos.
Calculated, beautiful chaos.
Which presents a fascinating paradox for software developers, right? How do you take a machine that only understands ones and zeros, a machine designed entirely to eliminate error, and force it to simulate the unpredictable, chaotic physics of, wet mud being dragged across a woven canvas?
It's wild to think about. You literally have to engineer imperfection.
Exactly. And you have to do it in real time, calculating millions of variables a second so the user doesn't experience lag.
And that engineered imperfection, that is the foundation of our deep dive today.
It's a fun one.
It really is. We are looking at a specific milestone in digital design where the software finally managed to successfully fake the physics of reality. We have an incredibly dense roadmap ahead, completely focused on bridging the gap between flat, sterile graphics and rich, textured artistry right inside a digital workspace.
It's essential stuff for anyone building a career in design.
Absolutely. Understanding the mechanics of how this works is what separates a generic digital portfolio from a professional tactile one.
It's a complete paradigm shift.
Yeah.
I mean, we're moving from just stamping pixels to actually simulating fluid dynamics.
Exactly. And to guide this breakdown, we are pulling from a literal gold standard text in the industry. We're going deep into Adobe Photoshop CC Classroom in a book 2018.
Such a great resource.
It really is. Specifically, we are going to tear apart the nuts and bolts inside Chapter 10, Painting with the Mixer Brush.
It's a brilliant chapter to focus on because it forces a complete cognitive reset.
How?
Well, you have to stop thinking like a computer operator, and start thinking like a traditional oil painter, but with an algorithmic engine translating your hand movements.
Okay, before we get into the actual physics of this engine, I want to make sure you, the listener, can actually follow along with the source material we're referencing.
Yeah, having the actual files is huge.
So for those of you building your design reference library, you can buy the book by scanning the QR code of the book link provided in the description below.
Because having the source files they provide, like the visual palettes and the landscape photography we'll be manipulating, it really grounds the abstract concepts we are going to discuss today.
Highly recommend grabbing it. And while you are down there checking out the description, we explicitly request the audience to follow the show for more technical design breakdowns and career building content.
Please do.
We love unpacking these specific tools, and having you along for the ride makes it all worth it.
So if we are going to dive into the mixer brush, we actually need to start with a workflow habit that the book highlights right out of the gate.
Oh, right, the clean slate protocol.
Exactly. It's a protocol for resetting the state machine of the software itself, restoring default preferences.
Which is so important because for anyone who has worked in complex software, you know that the application, it remembers what you did yesterday.
Oh, it remembers everything.
Yeah, and if you are starting a project that relies on highly sensitive physics simulations, like we are about to do, you can't have ghost variables interfering.
Precisely. So in Photoshop, holding down Control, Alt, and Shift on Windows or Command Option, and Shift on a Mac while the application is launching, it intercepts the boot sequence.
It's like a hard reset.
Right. It prompts you to delete the settings file. Because when you are about to manipulate advanced brush dynamics, you want to guarantee your baseline is exactly what the engineers intended.
Because otherwise, what?
Yeah.
A stray pressure sensitivity curve left over from a late-night retouching session 3 weeks ago will completely skew how the mixer brush behaves today.
Yes, exactly that. It will ruin the simulation. It's basic digital hygiene.
Okay, so the software is reset. We have our clean slate. Let's establish the baseline here. If we are going to talk about the mixer brush, we need to explicitly define why the standard brush tool, the one everyone has used since the dawn of MS Paint, is fundamentally incapable of producing realistic art.
Right.
Like, what is actually happening under the hood when I use a standard digital brush?
So to understand the limitation, you really have to look at the standard brush as like a sophisticated stamp dispenser.
Stamp dispenser.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is entirely a raster-based duplication tool. When you select a standard brush, the software holds a 2D shape in its memory.
Right.
It might be a hard circle, it might be a scanned image of a chalk smudge, but it is static. When you click and drag your cursor, the software is just rapidly stamping that static shape along the vector path of your movement.
So it's just pasting a PNG over and over again, overlapping it to create the illusion of a continuous line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And while you can introduce jitter-like, randomizing the size or the opacity of the stamps as they dispense fundamentally, it is an additive, opaque process.
What does that mean in practice?
Well, if you have a canvas with a red background and you paint a blue stroke over it with the standard brush, the software is simply replacing the red pixel values with blue pixel values. The blue sits on top.
Oh, I see.
There is zero interaction between the two layers of data.
So it's like putting a blue piece of cellophane over a red piece of paper.
That's a great analogy, actually.
Right, because the red doesn't affect the blue, it just gets covered up.
Which is why standard digital painting often looks so sterile.
Yeah.
Real paint doesn't work like cellophane.
No, it definitely doesn't.
Real paint has viscosity, it has volume, it interacts with the substrate and whatever's already on the canvas. The standard brush engine doesn't calculate interaction, it only calculates replacement.
Which brings us to the paradigm shift we mentioned.
Yeah.
The mixer brush. Because this isn't just a new brush shape, it is an entirely different computational engine running inside the software.
It's a full-blown physics simulation.
That is the perfect way to describe it.
Yeah, the mixer brush throws the stamp dispenser model out the window. When you drag a mixer brush across the canvas, the software is performing real-time fluid dynamics calculations.
Wow.
It is looking at the color values loaded onto your digital bristles, and it is looking at the color values of the pixels you are dragging over. And it is actively calculating how they combine, smear, and dilute based on the speed and pressure of your stroke.
Okay, so if I drag a blue mixer brush through a puddle of red pixels, the engine doesn't just replace the red with blue.
No, it calculates the collision.
It calculates the collision. That's so cool.
It figures out that at the point of impact, the blue and red should mathematically average into a streak of purple. And as the stroke continues and the red paint gets dragged along, the purple should slowly fade back out.
So it literally simulates the thermodynamic transfer of pigment.
Yes. And to do this without lagging your computer to a halt, the software utilizes massive optimization. It's constantly updating a localized buffer of pixel data around the brush tip. The bristles leave physical-looking tracks because the engine calculates varying degrees of pressure across the diameter of the brush itself.
Now, to feed this hungry physics engine the data it needs, the book makes a very specific point about hardware.
Oh, the tablet recommendation, yes.
Right. It recommends using a graphics tablet with a pressure-sensitive stylus. And I want to look at this from a data throughput perspective.
Okay, let's do it.
Because a lot of designers coming from a pure UI or UX background might argue, hey, I have a high DPI gaming mouse. It pulls at 1,000 hertz. It is incredibly precise. Why do I need a stylus?
I hear that all the time.
Right, so it's not a question of budget for them. It's a question of input mechanics. What is the mouse failing to provide?
It's a great question. Because the issue isn't precision. The issue is dimensional vocabulary.
Dimensional vocabulary, I like that.
Think about it. A high-end mouse is essentially a highly precise rock that you drag across a desk.
A rock.
It is. It feeds the computer a continuous stream of two-dimensional coordinates, X and Y, and it tells the computer if a binary switch, the click is on or off. That's it. It's flat data.
So it's like a telegraph machine. Fast, but limited.
Exactly. The mixer brush engine, however, is built to simulate a three-dimensional interaction in a physical space. A pressure-sensitive stylus acts as an analog sensory instrument.
Okay, so how much data is it actually sending?
So much more. When you draw with a stylus, you aren't just sending X and Y coordinates, you are sending a continuous Z-axis data stream, which is pressure.
Right.
You are sending azimuth, which is the tilt of the pen relative to the tablet. You are sending altitude, the angle of the pen to the board. Advanced styluses even send barrel rotation data.
So a mouse gives the software a binary, I am here and I am painting, whereas a stylus provides a rich multivariable telemetry stream hundreds of times a second.
Precisely. If you want the software to calculate how the digital bristles splay out and push paint into the weave of the canvas, it needs to know how hard you are pressing.
That makes total sense.
If you want the edge of the stroke to be sharp on one side and feathered on the other, the software needs to know the angle at which you are holding the tool. You cannot map a physics simulation to a binary mouse click. You need an analog input to generate an organic output.
That reframes the hardware requirement completely. It's not an accessory, it is the actual interface required to unlock the algorithm.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have the stylus, and the book has us open a specific working file. It's this digital representation of a classic wooden painter's palette with 4 tubes of paint: red, blue, yellow, and green.
A great starting file.
And it's time to actually look at the UI that controls this engine. And honestly, this is where most people get intimidated and just, abandon the tool.
Yeah, the options bar can be overwhelming.
Right, because at the top of the screen, it introduces 3 parameters that do not exist for standard brushes. The holy trinity of the mixer brush: wet, load, and mix.
The big 3.
Let's dissect the mechanics of these 3 sliders, starting with wet. What is the software actually calculating when I change the wet percentage?
Okay, so wet is perhaps the most crucial variable because it determines the physical state of the digital canvas itself.
The canvas, not the brush.
Exactly. It controls the algorithmic viscosity of the pixels you are about to touch. If the wet slider is at 0%, you are telling the engine that the canvas is completely dry and cured.
Okay.
The pixels are locked in place. Your brush will deposit paint onto them, but it cannot pull any existing paint up from the surface.
So a 0% wet setting essentially reverts the canvas back to acting like that standard cellophane we talked about.
Yeah.
The background remains undisturbed.
Yes, exactly. But as you increase that percentage, you are lowering the activation energy required to move those background pixels.
Okay, so what happens at 100%?
If you set wet to 100%, you are telling the software, treat every pixel on this canvas like a puddle of liquid.
Oh, wow.
When the brush hits 100% wet canvas, it immediately pulls the color values of the existing pixels into the brush's active memory buffer. The canvas essentially attacks the brush, forcing its colors into your stroke.
That is wild. It alters the fundamental physics of the room.
It really does.
So wet is the environment. What about load?
Load is the capacity of the brush itself.
Right.
In standard digital painting, a brush has infinite paint. It never runs out. But in the physical world, a brush is a reservoir. You dip it in a jar, the bristles absorb a finite amount of pigment, and as you drag it across paper, that pigment is deposited until the brush is dry.
Right.
The load slider dictates the size of your digital reservoir.
So if I have a low load percentage, say 10%, the software is tracking the distance of my stroke and actively depleting the color array in real time.
Exactly. It monitors the pixel distance traveled. At 10% load, you might get, say, an inch of solid color across the screen before the pixels start to break apart, lose opacity, and eventually become completely transparent.
Even if I'm still pressing down hard with the stylus.
Even then, the array has emptied. To get more paint, you have to physically lift the stylus from the tablet, which breaks the continuous data stream, and place it back down, which tells the software to reload the reservoir.
That alone introduces so much organic texture. The fading out of a brush stroke is a hallmark of human illustration.
It's the friction we were talking about.
And then we have the third parameter, mix. How does this factor into the math?
Mix is the interpolation ratio. It determines who wins the tug of war between the paint on the canvas, which is the wetness, and the paint in the brush reservoir, which is the load.
Okay, so it's battle.
Basically, if your mix ratio is high, the software biases the calculation toward the canvas. The color you drag through will quickly overpower whatever pure color you started with on your brush.
And if it's low?
If the mix ratio is low, the software biases toward the reservoir, allowing your brush color to remain relatively pure even as it drags through wet paint.
It's a really delicate balancing act.
Very much so.
And the book acknowledges that manually dialing in these percentages every single time would destroy a designer's flow state. I mean, you'd constantly be tweaking sliders.
You'd never get any painting done.
So the software provides preset combinations in a pop-up menu. Let's analyze how these presets alter the simulation, starting with the dry preset.
Okay, so when you select the dry preset, Photoshop instantly sets wet to 0%, load to 50%, and entirely disables the mix slider.
Because if the canvas is mathematically dry, there is literally nothing to mix with.
Right. So the book has, you use the eyedropper tool to sample the red paint tube on that visual palette. You paint a stroke in the white space. The engine looks at the 0% wet setting and says, do not alter the white background.
Got it.
It looks at the 50% load setting and says, deposit pure red, but gradually fade to 0. The result is a highly textured, opaque streak of red that behaves like thick acrylic on a dry wall.
Okay, simple enough. But the real test of the engine is when we introduce moisture. The book moves us to the wet preset.
For this one, the parameters shift. You sample the blue paint. The wet setting jumps up, which activates the canvas pixels. When you paint a stroke near the blue tube, you are painting over a white digital background.
And this is where the computational magic happens.
Yes, because the wet parameter is active, the white pixels are no longer locked. As the blue-loaded brush hits the white pixels, the engine constantly calculates the collision.
So it's actively averaging them.
Exactly. It averages the blue and the white, creating a soft, milky, light blue halo around the edge of the stroke where the bristles meet the canvas. The center of the stroke remains darker because the load is pushing fresh blue paint down, but the edges bleed.
Now, thinking about this from a troubleshooting perspective, say someone is attempting this. They set the brush to wet, they paint blue over the white area, and absolutely no mixing happens.
A classic beginner issue.
It's just a harsh, flat blue line. Where did the simulation break down?
The simulation didn't break down, actually. The user isolated the variables improperly.
What do you mean?
Well, the mixer brush, by its default logic, only calculates physics based on the currently selected active layer in the Layers panel.
Oh.
If a user creates a brand new, empty, transparent layer on top of the stack and starts painting there, the engine has nothing to mix with.
Because transparency has no color data.
Exactly. The engine tries to average blue with null data, and the result is just blue. If you want the blue to physically mix with the white, you have to ensure the layer containing the white pixels is the actively selected layer. You have to paint directly onto the substrate you want to interact with.
Layer discipline is paramount when you're dealing with interacting variables.
Absolutely.
So we've seen dry, we've seen wet. The book takes it further to a preset called very wet. And this is where the simulation almost feels like it loses friction entirely.
It does. You sample the yellow tube, set it to very wet, and paint over the white background. The engine dials the wetness variable so high that the white pixels almost completely overwhelm the yellow pigment.
So the yellow just vanishes.
It gets extremely diluted. The yellow dilution is intense and immediate. It feels slippery almost. You are essentially watching the software calculate rapid fluid dispersion in real time.
It fundamentally changes your relationship with the software. You aren't plotting points on a grid anymore. You are managing the physical properties of a simulated environment.
Like being a digital chemist.
Which leads us perfectly into the next phase, the alchemy of color mixing. We've been mixing paint with a blank white background, but true painting involves cross-contaminating actual pigments. We need to mix the red and the blue together on the palette.
And this introduces a massive workflow challenge.
Yeah.
We just established that to mix colors, you have to paint on the layer that contains those colors.
Right.
But our visual palette is sitting on a layer that also contains the photographic texture of brown wood.
I see the problem. If I paint red and blue directly on that layer, the wetness algorithm is going to pull the brown wood pixels into the mix.
Yep. You won't get purple, you'll get a muddy, desaturated brown sludge.
So I'd be permanently destroying the base image.
Precisely. You'd ruin the file.
So how do we mix colors on a transparent layer, protecting the wood, but still allow the red and blue paint to interact with each other?
There has to be a way, right?
There has to be a way to tell the engine to look across the layer hierarchy.
And there is. It's a checkbox in the options bar called Sample All Layer.
Okay, sample all layers.
When this is checked, the physics engine ignores layer boundaries. It looks at a composite view of every visible pixel directly beneath the brush cursor, calculates the mix of all those colors, and then outputs the result onto whatever your currently selected active layer is.
But wait, if we check sample all layers, won't the engine still see the brown wood and pull it into the calculation?
Exactly right. It would, which is why understanding the logic of this tool is so vital. In this specific exercise, you must not check sample all layers.
Oh, okay, plot twist.
You want the engine to be completely blind to the brown wood. So you select an empty layer called Paint Mix. You leave sample all layers unchecked. Now, you are in a sandbox.
A sandbox.
The only things that will interact are the colors you manually introduce onto this specific transparent layer. The wood beneath is visually present, but mathematically invisible to the brush.
It's all about aggressively controlling the data inputs. Okay, so we are safely sandboxed on the paint mix layer. Walk me through the actual mixing process.
First, you establish your base. You sample the pure red paint. You ensure the preset is set to wet. You paint a solid red circle on the transparent layer. You have now introduced data to the sandbox.
But to mix effectively, we have to disable one of the software's default safety features, right? The auto clean function.
Yes, this is huge. Up in the options bar, there's an icon of a brush with a small droplet next to it. It's the clean the brush after each stroke toggle. By default, Adobe leaves this on.
What does it do?
It acts as an automated digital assistant. Every single time you lift your stylus from the tablet, the assistant instantly washes all residual color out of your digital reservoir and refills it with your pure primary foreground color.
Which is great if you want consistent, clean lines.
But disastrous if you are trying to act like a real painter.
Because a real painter's brush gets dirty.
And that dirtiness is where the magic happens. So the book instructs you to explicitly disable this auto clean feature.
Yeah.
You tell the assistant to go home, you sample the pure blue paint, you drag that blue loaded brush directly into the red circle you painted earlier.
And because it's wet, the red canvas pixels push back into the brush reservoir.
Exactly. The calculation fires. The red and blue combine, creating a streak of purple. And here is the critical part. Because you turned off auto clean, when you lift your stylus, that purple calculation stays in the brush's memory buffer.
The bristles are now contaminated.
Yes. If you move to a blank area of the canvas and paint a new stroke, it won't be pure blue. It will be the dirty, swirling purple you just created.
Which is incredibly authentic to the physical medium. But it begs the question, if my brush is now perpetually contaminated with purple, how do I get my pure blue back? Do I just resample the blue tube?
You could, but a professional workflow requires better hygiene. You need to know how to manually purge the buffer.
How do you do that?
In the options bar, next to the color swatch, there is the current brush load drop-down menu. It provides a tiny, real-time visual representation of the exact chaotic mix of colors currently loaded on your bristles. You click that menu and select Clean Brush.
And what does the software do?
It flushes the color array. The visual representation changes to a checkerboard grid. The brush is now completely devoid of pigment. It is wet, but empty.
Which is a tool in itself, right? An empty wet brush isn't useless.
Far from it. An empty wet mixer brush is the ultimate blending tool. It's a digital smudge stick. Because it holds no new color, its only function is to push around and average the pixels already on the canvas.
That level of granular control is why this tool is considered professional grade. You are constantly managing the state of the canvas, the state of the reservoir, and the automation of the cleaning cycle.
It takes practice.
The lesson has you continue this process mixing yellow and blue to create a vibrant green, cleaning the brush, then mixing yellow and red for a deep orange. And when you are done, you have a digital file that looks entirely physical.
It builds muscle memory for managing the physics engine. But of course, mixing colors on a digital palette is just an academic exercise.
Right, it's just the primer.
The true power of this engine is how it manipulates existing complex data, like a photograph.
Which takes us to the real-world application. The book transitions to a project where we are going to completely transform a standard digital photograph into an oil painting.
A great
The
exercise.
source file is 10landscapestart.jpg, a scenic shot of a grassy hill, a blue sky, and a large central oak tree.
And immediately, the book forces a workflow efficiency lesson. When you are painting a complex scene, you cannot stop every 30 seconds to manually adjust the wet, load, mix sliders, the bristle stiffness, and the color load.
The cognitive load would destroy your creative momentum.
Completely. You need presets.
But we aren't talking about the basic wet or dry presets we used earlier. We are talking about complete state saves. And there is a massive architectural shift in how Photoshop handles these in the CC 2018 version compared to older iterations.
This is a game changer.
Let's delve into that history a bit, because understanding why the tools are structured this way helps you actually exploit them.
So in earlier eras of Photoshop, the software architecture was highly siloed to conserve memory. If you built a specific brush tip, say scattered array of dots, you save that in the brushes panel.
Okay.
But if you wanted that tip to always use the mixer brush engine, always be 50% wet, and always have a specific blending mode applied, you couldn't save that in the brushes panel. You had to save it as a tool preset in a completely separate menu.
That sounds like a nightmare for file organization. You'd have a great brush tip, but forget which physics settings were supposed to accompany it.
It was highly fragmented. But by CC 2018, Adobe realized that memory was cheaper and processors were faster. They unified the object model.
Thank goodness.
Right. The Brush Presets panel was overhauled to become an absolute powerhouse. Now, a single brush preset file, an ABR file, can encapsulate a staggering amount of metadata.
It basically saves the entire state machine.
Exactly. It remembers the 2D alpha channel of the brush tip, the spacing dynamics, the bristle stiffness calculations, the exact wet load, mix percentages, the opacity, and, most importantly, it can save the exact RGB color values loaded into the reservoir at the moment of saving.
That is huge.
One click, and the software reconfigures dozens of variables instantaneously.
So for this landscape project, we aren't starting from scratch. We are importing a specialized toolkit. The book provides CIB landscape brushes.abr. You open the brushes panel menu, choose import brushes, and suddenly you have a new folder populated with highly engineered tools.
And the UI design here is crucial. When you expand that imported folder, you aren't just looking at a list of text names. The panel renders a stroke preview.
Oh, nice.
It visually shows you what the mathematical calculation of that brush looks like when dragged across a canvas. It shows the texture, the fade, the edges.
It's visual cataloging. But relying purely on imported tools limits your potential. You know, a master craftsman knows how to build their own tools.
Always.
So the book walks us through engineering a custom brush, specifically designed to paint the broad blue sky over our landscape photo.
This is where we look at the variables of the bristle engine itself, the physics of the physical brush hardware. You start by selecting an imported round fan brush as a base chassis, but then you open the brush settings panel to manipulate its geometry.
Let's break down the logic of these settings. We aren't just punching in numbers, we are building a physical object in a virtual space.
Right.
The book specifies a size of 36 pixels. That's just surface area. But then it specifies the shape as round fan. Why a fan brush for a sky?
Well, think about the physics of a physical fan brush. The bristles are spread out horizontally in a wide, flat arc. When you drag it, it covers a large area with a relatively thin, even layer of pigment, minimizing harsh, concentrated lines.
Which is perfect for skies.
Right. A sky requires soft, sweeping, continuous gradients. The fan geometry mathematically distributes the color calculation over a wider, softer footprint.
Then we get into the microarchitecture. Bristles, 35%. What does this variable actually calculate?
This is the density algorithm. It calculates how many individual digital hairs exist within that 36-pixel radius. If density is 100%, the brush acts like a solid sponge, opaque, and uniform.
But at 35%?
At 35%, it is relatively sparse. The software intentionally introduces gaps and null spaces between the calculated hair paths. When you paint, those gaps leave visible striations and tracks, which read to the human eye as physical canvas texture.
It's engineering the flaws. I love that. Next is length, 32%.
Length alters the drag coefficient in the calculation. If the digital bristles are very short, say 5%, they are rigid stubs. The paint goes down exactly where the cursor is, very harshly.
Okay, so a longer bristle flexes more.
Exactly. At 32%, the software simulates a longer hair that flexes and bends as it is dragged. This introduces a slight algorithmic delay and smoothing to the stroke, making the edges softer and the curves more sweeping.
Okay, next setting. Thickness, 2%.
This defines the diameter of each individual bristle calculation. At 2%, you are dealing with very fine, delicate hairs like sable. It ensures that the tracks left by the 35% density setting are sharp and subtle, rather than looking like you're dragging a garden rake through the paint.
Right, no garden rakes. And stiffness, 75%.
Stiffness is the resistance algorithm. It calculates how much the digital bristles splay outward in response to the pressure data coming from your stylus Z-axis. At a high stiffness of 75%, the brush holds its shape firmly.
So you really have to lean into it.
You have to press very hard on the tablet to force the bristles to spread. This gives the artist tight control over the width of the stroke.
It's astounding how much math goes into a single click and drag.
Yeah.
So we have the geometry built, now we load it with state, we dial in a specific light blue RGB value for the foreground color, and then, crucially, we set the mixer preset in the options bar to dry.
Very important step.
Now this is a strategic workflow decision. We are painting a sky over a photograph. Why do we explicitly not want the brush to be wet here?
because of data contamination. We are painting over a JPEG photograph. The pixels comprising the original photo sky contain artifacts, digital noise, and variations in lighting.
Ah, I see.
If our brush is wet, the physics engine will pull those underlying photographic pixels up into our smooth blue paint stroke. We don't want to mix with the photo, we want to completely obliterate it with opaque paint. Setting it to dry tells the engine to ignore the underlying layer completely and just lay down thick, fresh pigment.
It's essentially creating an opaque underpainting, and then you save this entire configuration as a new brush preset, ensuring the options to capture tool settings and color are checked. It is locked in the vault, ready forever.
And as a career habit, organizing these custom presets into heavily curated folders is what allows professional illustrators to meet brutal deadlines.
Organization is key. So, we execute the masterpiece, we take our dry sky brush, and we paint over the photographic sky, cutting close to the edge of the central oak tree. Because it's dry, the photo vanishes beneath thick blue strokes.
It covers it beautifully.
Then the book has us switch to a clouds brush, which is engineered with different parameters, softer, wetter, and we use a scrubbing motion to blend fluffy white areas into the wet blue paint, creating atmospheric depth.
But as you are doing this, a common psychological friction point emerges for beginners.
What's that?
Well, we just spent a lot of time engineering a 3D fan brush with flexible bristles. But when you look at your computer screen, your cursor is just a flat 2D circle outline.
Wow, right.
It's hard to predict exactly how the stroke will behave when you change the angle of your hand.
Which is where Adobe introduced one of the most brilliant UI features to bridge that mental gap, the live tip brush preview.
It is a phenomenal piece of engineering. You toggle it on via an icon at the bottom of the brushes panel. When activated, the software utilizes your computer's GPU to render a floating 3D model of the brush tip in the corner of your screen.
And it's not static, right? It is directly tied to the telemetry stream of your stylus.
Exactly. As you roll the physical stylus in your fingers or tilt it down toward the tablet, the 3D rendering on your screen instantly matches the orientation. You can visually see the angle of the digital fan brush before you ever apply pressure.
That's incredible.
It removes the guesswork. It maps the physical proprioception of your hand directly to the digital calculation.
It reminds you that you are wielding an instrument, not just clicking a mouse. Okay, so we finished the sky. The rest of the landscape is about sequencing. You use a green grass highlight brush to block in the sunlit hills. You use a foreground tree brush to paint the heavy shadows of the oak tree. Then a softer background trees brush for the distant foliage.
Right.
Why switch tools just based on distance?
It's simulating atmospheric perspective algorithmically. Objects closer to the lens have higher contrast and sharper textures. Objects further away are obscured by the atmosphere, appearing softer and less defined.
Makes sense.
By using a brush engineered with softer bristle dynamics for the background, you force the scene to have optical depth.
The details really matter. Now, the book offers a very specific technical solution for a common physical problem here. When you are painting the intricate edges of the tree leaves against the sky, it requires intense, fine motor control.
It does.
If your hand shakes even slightly, like maybe the caffeine kicks in, the digital stroke captures that jitter perfectly. The edge looks jagged.
The machine is almost too accurate for its own good.
Right, so how do we compensate for human biological noise?
With a digital shock absorber.
A shock absorber.
Yeah. Up in the options bar, there's a setting called smoothing, controlled by a percentage slider. This is a brilliant algorithm. When you increase the smoothing percentage, the software stops drawing the line exactly where your cursor is.
Wait, really? Where does it draw it?
Instead, it places the cursor on a virtual leash. As you drag, the software averages out the micro fluctuations and tremors of your hand, calculating a mathematically smooth Bézier curve behind the cursor.
So it actively filters out the noise.
Yes. It introduces a tiny bit of latency to calculate the average path, but the result is a sweeping, flawless curve that would be nearly impossible to execute freehand on a slippery glass tablet surface.
It's the perfect marriage of human intent and machine precision. So you finish the piece by using vertical strokes with a brown grass brush to simulate the stalks of dry field grass, and you drag a foreground grass brush diagonally to blend the dirt and the greens together.
And you step back, and you have transformed a sterile array of photographic pixels into a breathing, textured painting.
And you did it without the toxicity of turpentine, without the drying times of linseed oil, and with the ability to hit Ctrl-Z if you ruined a leaf.
The ultimate creative sandbox.
It really is. Now, everything we've discussed so far assumes you are relying on the default brushes provided in the book, or you are taking the time to painstakingly engineer your own tools.
Right.
But in the professional world, time is money. You don't always want to build the hammer before you build the house. Which brings us to an incredible piece of software history and the democratization of elite tools. Let's talk about the Kyle T. Webster acquisition.
Oh, this is a watershed moment for the Adobe ecosystem. It completely altered the value proposition of a Creative Cloud subscription for illustrators.
To understand the impact, we need to understand the economics of digital tools prior to, 2017. For years, if you wanted truly exceptional brushes that mimicked real-world media graphite that actually looked grainy, watercolors that bloomed and bled realistically, the default Photoshop brushes often fell short.
They definitely did.
Professionals had to look to the third-party indie market. And in that market, one name was undisputed royalty: Kyle T. Webster.
The legend. Kyle wasn't just a programmer tweaking algorithms. He is a premier, internationally recognized illustrator. His work is heavily featured in The New Yorker, Time, The New York Times, Nike campaigns. He is deeply entrenched in the highest echelons of editorial and commercial illustration.
So he knew what he was doing.
He knew exactly, intimately, what a professional needed a tool to feel like.
Because he needed them for his own deadlines. So he started engineering these incredibly complex, highly refined custom brushes and selling them on his personal website, kylebrush.com. And they became the industry standard. Every working professional I knew had dropped $50 or $100 on Kyle's brush pack.
He essentially out-engineered a multi-billion-dollar corporation's default offerings by applying intense artistic intuition to their own physics engine.
And Adobe realized this. So at the Adobe Max conference in October 2017, they made a massive announcement. They didn't just partner with them, they acquired kylebrush.com entirely, and they brought Kyle in-house to direct their digital brush development.
And the shockwave was the distribution model. When corporations acquire indie tools, they usually lock them behind premium paywalls. Adobe did the opposite.
They gave them away.
Overnight, they took over 1,000 of the world's best-selling professional-grade brushes tools that used to cost a significant amount of money and integrated them directly into Photoshop, completely free for all Creative Cloud members.
It instantly raised the baseline quality of digital art globally. Every student, every beginner suddenly had the exact same toolkit as an illustrator working for The New Yorker.
It was a massive democratization of quality.
And accessing them is seamlessly integrated into the UI. You don't have to scour the web. You open the Brushes panel menu, select Get More Brushes, and it routes you to a dedicated Adobe portal. You can download specialized ABR files like the Mega Pack, the Spatter Pack, the Dry Media Pack. You double-click the file, and they instantly populate your workspace, perfectly organized.
It's an arsenal of engineered imperfection right at your fingertips.
To really drive home the capability of this engine and these tools, the book concludes with a painting gallery. We obviously can't show the images here on audio, but we can analyze the range of physics being simulated. The diversity of aesthetics is the real proof of concept.
Absolutely. The gallery demonstrates that the mixer brush isn't just a one-trick pony. For instance, look at the piece by Megan Lee. It's a conceptual illustration of a space cat.
A space cat, a classic internet genre. But technologically, what is happening in the image?
The image is highly celestial, glowing, vibrant, luminous. It doesn't look like traditional earthbound paint. It utilizes brushes with heavy scattering dynamics, where the digital bristles are mathematically dispersed over a wide area, combined with blending modes that calculate additive light rather than subtractive pigment.
Wow, so it looks like plasma.
Exactly. It proves the engine can handle hyper-modern sci-fi aesthetics.
Okay, now compare that to the work of John Derry featured in the same gallery. It's the exact opposite end of the spectrum.
John Derry's pieces are masterclasses in traditional simulation. He has a piece depicting a San Francisco street scene with a cable car. It is pure impressionism. You can visually identify the heavy, thick, vertical strokes of what looks exactly like oil paint.
How does he achieve that?
The engine is utilizing maximum load and low mix to create severe, opaque ridges of color that stand out against the background.
And his autumnal lake scene.
That one pushes the wet variable to the extreme. The reflection of the orange and yellow trees in the water is achieved by using a clean, highly wet brush to pull the pixel data downward in a vertical blur, perfectly simulating the optical distortion of a rippling lake surface. The engine is doing the heavy lifting of calculating the light diffusion.
Then we have hyperrealism, Victoria Pavlov's still life of two pairs.
This piece is staggering because of the rendering of volume. It doesn't look like a painting. It looks like a tactile object.
Really, just from the brush?
Yeah, she manipulated the fine bristle settings and the dry load to create an incredibly dense, buttery texture on the skin of the pears. You could almost feel the waxiness. It's a testament to how precisely the engine responds to micro-adjustments in stylus pressure to build up microscopic layers of digital pigment.
And finally, the engine's ability to handle dry media, showcased by the artist Scholbe.
Yes, Scholbe's sketched man with a suitcase. This entirely strips away the fluid dynamics. The engine is reconfigured to calculate dry friction. The strokes mimic soft graphite or charcoal dragging across a heavily toothed textured paper.
So the lines break apart.
They break apart, they are gritty and immediate. It utilizes the texture mapping capabilities of the brush engine to calculate where the digital pigment should catch on the virtual paper grain and where it should skip over the valleys.
It is genuinely awe-inspiring. From glowing plasma to thick impasto oils to buttery realism to gritty charcoal, all generated by manipulating the exact same underlying mathematical algorithms within the exact same software application.
It proves a fundamental truth about modern design software, The limitation is rarely the tool itself. The limitation is almost always the user's understanding of the tool's underlying mechanics. When you understand the math, you control the aesthetic.
Which brings us to the core philosophy of this entire deep dive. We spent the last hour dissecting the physics, the UI, the hardware, and the history of the mixer brush. We've looked at how software calculates wetness, load, and bristle density. But let's pull back to the macro view.
The macro view is that the pursuit of perfection in digital art is often a dead end. We spent decades building machines to eradicate the flaws of human handiwork. We achieved that perfection. And then we immediately realized it lacked a soul.
The clean room we built became a prison.
Exactly. And the mixer brush engine is Adobe handing you a sledgehammer to break the pristine glass of that clean room. It is a massive, computationally expensive set of algorithms specifically engineered to reintroduce chaos, friction, and dirt back into the creative process. It forces the computer to simulate the happy accidents that make art resonate with the human nervous system.
Engineered imperfection.
So the question I would leave with anyone listening, especially if you are building your portfolio or trying to establish your creative voice, where in your pristine, mathematically perfect digital workflow can you introduce a little bit of calculated chaos? How can you use the physics engines available to you to make your digital output feel more tactile, more grounded, and ultimately more human?
That is a brilliant provocation to end on. How do you engineer your own imperfection? Well, that wraps up our deep dive today. A massive thank you to everyone who stuck with us through the intense technical mechanics of fluid simulation in a 2D space. Understanding this level of detail is exactly how you build career capital.
The professionals are the ones who understand the why behind the what.
Absolutely. Now, as a final reminder, to master these tools, you need to practice them. The visual files, the palette, the landscape we meticulously broke down, you can work through them yourself. Check the description below, scan the QR code, and buy Adobe Photoshop CC Classroom in a book 2018. Having the official Adobe methodology on your desk is invaluable.
It bridges the gap between theory and execution.
And if you found this level of technical breakdown helpful, please hit that follow button for the show. We're constantly analyzing the industry's most complex tools and providing the career-building insights you need to stay ahead of the curve. We want you with us for the next one.
Keep experimenting with your variables, and don't be afraid to make a mess on the canvas.
Until next time, stay curious, embrace the chaos, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.